So we just revealed two fundamental truths about me and Erica. We suck, and we're a highly dysfunctional team. Everything you've ever seen from us represents less than 0.01% of our work. Okay, the other 99.9% is full of
Dysfunction.
and
Suckiness.
and averageness, right?
Yeah.
But there's something in that 0.1% that's working. Because in the last decade, our inquiries have increased by 1,000%. Our rates have quadrupled, which is not to say that our hourly wage has quadrupled.
Definitely
Which
not.
is why, as we mentioned, even though we're going to share everything about the business side of
All
our business, total open books with that. It's not a business-focused course, okay? And like we've mentioned, it's not going to be all f-stop this and shutter speed that, okay? Because in our minds, we are not technical experts, okay? And we honestly feel like that has very little to do with our progression. So what we are focusing on is what we are good at.
Or what we think we're good
We
at.
think we're good at. And that's fooling the world, okay? By performing to our potential.
Right? Or actually by performing beyond our potential, right? But if you really think about it, the word potential, especially in the context of wedding photography, like the actual word potential is useless until you turn that potential into performance.
Right.
And our performance as wedding photographers is only partially rooted on our technical prowess, right? Knowing how to use our cameras and our lenses and our flashes is really important. But once we get to a certain level, our performance is not rooted in that. Our performance is rooted in our psychological landscape. It's rooted in our thought process. It's rooted in our philosophy, right? And it's rooted
How we see the world.
how we see the world and how we show up to a wedding, how we approach the wedding, and how we approach photography, right? That's where the magic is. And that's the hardest thing to teach because it's so undefinable. But that's what we're going to spend this week
That's
talking
essentially,
about.
that's essentially what this whole journey is about.
And Lanny and I are going to do a lot of sports analogies because, as we mentioned in the intro, we met at the National Track and Field Championships, and sports analogies just help everything make more sense.
It makes sense in our
brain.
brains, yeah.
So we actually think photographers in general are a lot like athletes, right? We pursue excellence in our craft. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that we're expected to perform when it counts, right? On race day. Like we don't get to decide when we can be creative. We have to show up on a wedding day and perform on that specific day, much like a track runner on race day, right? So this is Hicham El Guerrouj. Okay, Hicham El Guerrouj is not very famous, but he really should be because he's literally one of the greatest athletes of all time. He's a middle distance runner from Morocco, and he posted one of the most outstanding winning streaks of all time. It was 1996 to 2004, right? He won every single race in that 8-year span, and he broke what, like 12 world records or many world records. I don't know the exact figure, but in that 8-year span, he didn't lose any races except 2. And the 2 races he lost were the Olympic finals when he had the entire weight of the country on his shoulders, right? So essentially he choked, right? And the definition of choking is to lose one's composure and fail to perform effectively during a critical situation. So another example closer to us as Canadians was the Canada versus US women's hockey game, gold medal game at the Sochi Olympics. Okay, we're Canadians. Hockey's a big deal to us. And the US is our biggest rival. So with 5 minutes left in the game, the US was up 3-1. It was looking pretty dire. And then we scored, bringing it 3-2. And then with
2 minutes left. 2 minutes left, we scored.
Something like 2 minutes left, yeah. And then with less than 30 seconds left in regulation play, we scored again. bringing it into sudden death overtime, where we scored and we won the gold. Now, I'm a little bit biased, but I like to attribute at least part of this win to one of their coaches that was with them in the locker room going into that third period. And that happens to be their sports psychologist, who also happens to be my dad. And if you look at this picture, you can see the resemblance in the teeth. I can thank him for these teeth. There's an important distinction to be made here between sports psychology and regular psychology. More traditional psychology takes a look at dysfunction and how to turn dysfunction into normal functioning. What sports psychology does is it goes all the way over here, like way over here to the other end of the spectrum, and it looks at those that perform exceptionally, right? Those that are pursuing excellence in their craft and succeeding. And what is it that they're doing on the inside that's allowing them to perform on the outside? So we can learn a lot from this field of sports psychology. But it doesn't take a sports psychologist. It doesn't take an expert to realize that these upsets have little to do with skill and preparation and performance, and they have everything to do with what's going on in our heads, right? Everything that's happening up here. And this idea of choking is no less pervasive among wedding photographers. Okay, and you actually don't need to look any further than Lanny and I. Here's a photo of Lanny not performing to his potential. Okay, during a very critical moment, I might add. And I will also say I'm not performing to my potential very much either here, but this photo just cracks me up looking at Lanny's face. Like, he's panicking. He's completely panicking.
Well, explain what was going on.
Well, yeah, so we had this wedding it was a couple years ago. And it was in Edmonton, and we were sitting down, eating dinner. We thought it was a quiet time of the day, so we decided to get some calories in us. And in the middle of eating dinner, I guess the DJ just decided he wanted to get things moving along. And so with no warning whatsoever, he announced the first dance, okay? So first dance comes on. Lanny and I aren't prepared at all, but we scramble, we get ready. Oh no, you weren't even there, but I'll get to that in a second. So first dance comes on. Then in the middle of the dance, the music screeches to a halt, and a bouncy castle inflates on the middle of the dance floor. So the couple go from the first dance to the first bounce. And then they go to the garter toss, the bouquet toss, cake cutting. Yeah, immediately, one after the other, to the cake cutting, and the sparkler exit off the back porch to a 5-minute firework display. And this was all in the span of like 10 minutes with no warning whatsoever. And
most of that time,
yeah.
I was outside trying to get set up for the
Star
fireworks.
Oh no, yeah, sorry,
for the fireworks.
Yeah.
And then at one point, the door like flew open, and Erica's like, "Get the fuck in here!"
Yes, it was.
It was
and
brutal.
it was, I could have handled that situation. I've been in.
But we didn't.
We didn't.
We messed
in that
up
case.
all kinds of stuff.
Messed up all sorts of stuff. I bumped my ISO up to 128,000 and didn't notice. I forgot to turn my flash on and didn't notice. I seemingly forgot everything about what makes an interesting composition. I was just too jacked up to perform. But I can handle those situations.
We choked.
We failed to perform to our potential, essentially. Just like Hickam El Garouge and the U.S. women's hockey team during those critical moments, something in us, we were just too jacked up to perform. But if you think about it, how many critical moments do we come up against on any given wedding day? Right?
12.
Hundreds, right? It's the very nature of wedding photography. And I'm not talking like the predictable scripted moments, right? Like the first kiss or the cake cutting or the signing of the registry. Those aren't the critical moments I'm talking about. I'm talking about the critical moments that really matter, right? The glances, the touches, the surprises, right? It's the very nature of what we do with our cameras at weddings. Right? And so this disconnect between where our potential is and where our performance resides is what we think separates a lot of photographers, right? There's the photographers that, are incredibly skilled, incredibly talented, and have all these creative ideas, but they just seem to fall into their safe zone every weekend, right? They just seem to do what's comfortable, right? And then there's the photographers that aren't necessarily any more talented or any more skilled, but they're able to get these amazing shots every weekend. And so what we're going to focus on is how to close that gap between where our potential is and where our performance resides, right? How do we close that gap so that those things are closer together, right? They'll never be matched. And we never want them to be matched, right? We always want our potential to be out there, something for, something to reach for, right? So how do we close this gap? And there's something that Lanny and I realized we were focusing on at every single wedding that would help us close this gap between our potential and performance. And it's a really simple idea. And it's an idea so simple it can be boiled down to one word.
One word.
One word. Starts with L. It's 4 letters.
Rhymes
Luck.
with.
Don't do that. Okay, so luck. That's the word. So our motto has kind of become, if you suck, rely on luck.
It's like what happened to my uncle Toby. Okay, Toby was a religious man, and he prayed to God every day. And he prayed to win the lottery. God, please help me win the lottery. And he did this day in and day out religiously, and it never happened. He never lost the faith. He kept praying, and it never happened until finally, after like 27 years of praying, the clouds parted, and this voice boomed down from above. It was like, Toby, throw me a bone, buy a fucking ticket. In photography, especially documentary photography, getting lucky is not about praying to the photography gods. It's about buying tickets, lots of them. Your probability of hitting a home run improves dramatically when you actually step up to the plate and swing for the fence. Show me any compelling photograph, and I can show you how the photographer sought after and capitalized on luck. And this is not about hoping for accidental luck. Okay, this is about consciously pursuing intentional luck. Okay, and it's an art that Erica and I exploit every time we pick up our cameras.
Some of you are probably regretting your purchase right now. You're like, my God, what did I just sign up to? These guys are going to attribute all their success to random luck and circumstance, but we're not. What we're going to do is show you how not to leave creativity up to chance, right? And how to stack the cards in your own deck so that when you show up for a wedding day, you're setting yourself up for success.